Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Looking pretty dapper there. Got a coat and tie on.
I know. Because I got to hit the job market. It looks like I'm not going to get that job as Biden's liaison to the Republicans, their outreach job. Went to somebody else. Whose
qualifications could exceed yours, Mickey?
It's impossible to imagine. I mean, it was so obvious that I was the guy. I mean, I'm a Democrat, and yet I'm a Republican. So I'm perfect.
That's what they wanted. Who did they settle on?
Some guy named Christian Ferry, who's a McCain person who's very anti-Trump and won't have any appeal to Republicans at all. Bill Kristol would have been better. This guy has all the baggage of Bill Kristol without Bill Kristol's connections. So, what can I say? So I gotta, type up the old resume and pound the pavement.
So the never Trumper Republicans' plot to insidiously influence America's policy has succeeded?
No, Bill Kristol advertised. He said, "Hey, if you want help on passing an immigration bill, I'll help you. I have a lot of contacts." I mean, he basically volunteered his services, which is unfortunate because he was actually against the Gang of Eight bill. So he's flipped back. I mean, this may show the importance of immigration in his worldview, i.e. it's not that important at all. There are other things that are much more important, so he'll flip and flop back and forth, as required by his larger goals.
And what are those larger goals, Mickey?
I don't know. I assume it has something to do with Israel, but also other things. What about you?
My larger goals? I'm trying to save the world.
Yeah, okay. Well, so is he.
Hey, speaking of which, have your ideas lately been endorsed by any rock stars?
I don't think so.
The reason I ask is because mine have.
Bono?
No, not Bono. James Valentine, lead guitarist for Maroon 5.
That's like a band headed by one of Tim Noah's relatives.
I absolutely knew, Mickey, that when I mentioned this, you would try to denigrate Maroon 5. That is your go-to move when your status is threatened. Denigrate all other than you, if necessary. Scorched earth campaign of status reduction, so Mickey's little ego won't feel quite so threatened.
You're on to me, Bob.
Anyway,
it's a sound Darwinian strategy, isn't it?
I will launch a full-throated defense of Maroon 5 in the Parrot Room. But first, I'd like to tell you what James Valentine wrote on Twitter. I published my progressive realism manifesto in the Washington Post. It wasn't quite framed as such, but anyway, it was there. Progressive realist foreign policy. And James Valentine yeah.
I mean, you took my advice and published it.
I took the advice
bitching about it.
I took the advice that you delivered in the Parrot Room, where Parrot Room patrons assemble and hear, things that are not heard anywhere else on this planet. Anyway, back to James Valentine, if you don't mind. He tweets, "Call me a progressive realist!" Exclamation point. And in parentheses, read this article. But also read Robert Reiter's excellent book, Nonzero. I would be Robert Reiter. That would be my Twitter handle. Mickey, do you have any stories to report about celebrity endorsement of any kind lately? Even let's go beyond the rock and roll realm. Do you have anything you'd like to? Oh, apparently not. We'll have to get back to the week's events.
I like the story of Congressman Enzi meeting with Bono and saying goodbye and saying good luck with the band.
Was this after Bono was in semi-retirement as a musician and was focusing on saving the world?
They're still churning out albums. They get worse and worse, but yeah. That's like one of my grandmother's friends was a famous opera singer, and I said, "I hope you sing. Hope you sing well tonight." That was not what I was supposed to say.
Supposed to say break a leg.
So Bob, this isn't just like a a phony Zoom call where I'm wearing like shorts underneath. This outfit, this is like the whole. No, wait.
Oh, okay, okay, it worked out okay.
I'm lowering and raising
Mickey,
my camera,
please,
Toobin style, just to show that I'm wearing pants. I'm wearing suit pants, and I have dress shoes.
I can. For those in our audio, our listening audience, I can vouch that Mickey was not pleasuring his parrot, as they say in the parrot room.
There was Toobin news this week.
Oh, was there? I missed it.
There's a big article in the New York Times where it featured two things. One is other people at the New Yorker sort of trying to defend him. Even Masha Gessen, who was horrified, she said she was horrified by the incident, said, well, this is just like somebody who takes a long lunch break and has sex and somebody stumbles onto him. No, I don't think it's just like that. But
not exactly.
And Malcolm Gladwell saying, well, there's the only reason I can think of for disciplining him is that the New Yorker has adopted Catholic teachings, which is clever, but then it also had other tawdry details, including a call he had placed to a woman he'd asked out for New Year's, and it was their first date. And before the date, he left a voicemail on her machine, describing in crude detail the acts he wanted to perform on her. And then he called her, and when she said, "I'd like to be taken to dinner first," he said, "Well, I'm getting back together with my wife. The date's off."
Oh, man. He violated an adage that I live by personally, which is never leave a message about crude acts that you're planning to perform with a woman on her answering machine.
I think it's revealing because it shows he was vetting her. In other words, he's a busy man, and this gets
right
to the larger point. He's a busy man. If she's not going to go along with the acts, he doesn't want to go through with the New Year's thing. He's going to get back together with his wife. So she failed the test by balking at this crude description.
Now, this reminds me, not to drag this completely down into the gutter, but the Frank Gifford tape where some woman set him up, I guess, and he was heading into a hotel room not knowing it was being videotaped or something. And when as soon as he walks through the door, he starts like commenting on her anatomy in ways that would puncture any illusions about any long-term plans he might have had courtship-wise. So, yeah, this is a thing, I guess, that is done. Well, thanks for keeping track of.
It also had the detail that he has a brother who has Down syndrome who's in a group home. And when he dictated the obituary of his mother, he left this kid completely out of the obituary.
Whoa, this is getting ugly. Are we sure about this?
That was a nasty interpretation, but it was clearly the interpretation the writers wanted you to have. That he said this obituary, based on an interview with Mr. Toobin, left the kid out.
So anyway, how is the bet I placed with you looking? The one where I bet that he would not be back at CNN within 2 months of the infraction. Looking pretty good, huh?
Is my time up? It's looking good. I think he'll eventually be back at CNN, but I might not make that timeline. I mean, this was a little bit like Jane Mayer's attempt to revive Al Franken. Didn't quite do the job. So they have a little more work to do. But if CNN wanted to fire him, they probably would have fired him, no? Don't you think?
No, they might just never mention it. That would be a pretty graceful way to handle the whole thing. I don't know.
Well, at some point they have to stop paying him.
Well, they could just say, hey, give him a call and say, you may have noticed you didn't get a check this month. If you want to talk about it publicly, feel free. I doubt he would.
That would be an interesting strategy. Anyway, CNN's all up in the air because of Jeff Zucker.
Which we talked about a little last week, but possibly in the parrot room.
Anyway, I don't remember that. But anyway, so the problem with the Toobin thing is there are all these people who are sort of correctly saying that Me Too has gone too far and you shouldn't destroy a person's life work because of, one gross act of sexual perversion. But sometimes people who commit gross acts of sexual perversion actually are bad people.
It can happen.
But I'm clearly on the losing side of that. So a bunch of my friends are defending Toobin. So I'm going to have to publicly support him while I privately stab him in the back. I mean, so I think he doesn't deserve to be fired.
You're doing a great job of, they'll never guess.
It's very unfair. It's very unfair that they fire this guy. But I do notice that there is a consistent theme running through his personal life and his private life. Remember, he claims they're separate. He claims that a politician's private life has nothing to do with his public life, in violation of every rule of every biographer who's ever lived, who try to look for the connection. There's an obvious connection in Toobin's case, which is he is a selfish careerist, and he will do what is best for Toobin. So,
unlike the rest of us,
when he's the lawyer for Special Counsel Walsh, if it's in Toobin's interest to publish a book in violation of his ethics as a lawyer, he will publish the book.
But wait, what's that?
When he's writing about Bill Clinton, if it's in his interest to slime my friend Mike Isikoff and make this ridiculous assertion that a politician's private life has nothing to do with his public life, he will do that.
But what's the connection between that and pleasuring his parrot without muting his camera?
Well, if it's in his interest to cheat on his wife, he'll cheat on his wife. If it's in his interest to say he stopped cheating on his wife while he's still cheating on his wife, he'll do that. But it was his parrot. If it's in interest for his girlfriend to have an abortion,
it wasn't another woman in this case. He wasn't cheating on his wife. You're talking about his whole track record.
Yes.
Okay.
No, the Toobination part of it is just that he selfishly assumed that he could that this Zoom apparatus could accommodate his needs, when obviously it had trouble. But
the great thing about when you dress up, what I'm noticing is our discourse is correspondingly elevated. That's what I love about
the
this.
function of a suit is that it
you can get by with.
It forces you to be more polite and formal.
Wait, I want to interrupt this program for a programming message. We should say we will not be a week from today is Christmas. We will not be taping on that day. However, the following Wednesday, which is January 30th, we will tape our Gala New Year's retrospective or something. Don't hold me to the retrospective part. We'll tape something as usual, and that will probably go up that night. Worst case would be Thursday morning, but I think it'll go up that night. So that's that.
One of the problems with taping on Friday is that things happen on Friday because Friday's a big news dump day. So even last week, what happened is the Supreme Court rejected your advice, and wisely took my advice, as you wisely took my advice with the Washington Post, and said that they dismissed the Texas suit with only a minimal amount of verbiage. They didn't go into a big denunciation.
Was that only a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
I think it was a week ago.
Wow.
Time flies. Anyway, so that happened while we were talking. They dismissed the Texas case. And this week, Trump may be madly pardoning people even as we speak.
Well, he apparently has a meeting right now with his acting Secretary of Defense. Who knows what will come out of that? I mean, hasn't Barr announced his resignation since we last talked? He has.
Yes. But
that was recent.
Yeah, that's old news. That was yesterday.
Well, right. But to us, it's new news. What do you make of it?
Well, it's pretty obvious that he eventually sours on all these people and he makes demands of them that they can't ethically carry out, and when they balk, he fires them. So you don't think he's going to take out one step ahead of the posse? You
don't think it's part of taking the Bannon Giuliani guidance to appoint a special prosecutor, at least to prosecute Hunter Biden, possibly the Bidens generally, and possibly to investigate the election? That's the other thing they're advocating: a special counsel to investigate the conduct of this election.
I wouldn't mind one with Hunter Biden. Otherwise, it's going to get swept under the rug. The others seem ridiculous. But what else did Bannon say? Did he have any more truck drivers?
He still talks about the truck driver every once in a while. I mean, he's keeping hope alive. In fact, I kind of need you to tell me. I continue to spend so much time in the Bannon ecosystem, and he is so good at keeping hope alive that I need you to reassure me that Biden is going to be the next president.
Is he making a lot of Tommy Tuberville?
Well, I think Tuberville is one of the guys who might challenge they need one senator. Like if they're going to pull some mischief January 6th,
right,
and challenge specific electoral college delegations, they need a representative. They've already got a volunteer, Mo Brooks, and they need a senator. And
right.
Tuberville's a senator, right? You tell me. Tuberville.
Yes.
In addition to having been, a football coach or something?
Yes.
Okay. So, but they're putting pressure on other senators to do that. They're like, okay, Josh Hawley, if you really, you can talk the talk, but if you're going to walk the walk, you got to deliver on January 6th.
It's weird. According to Ryan Jerdusky, Tuberville is busy staffing up his congressional office with never Trumpers. So this is like just for show, while the real he's just a complete con man. But but nothing's going to come of that, right? Does Bannon think this is going to overturn the election?
I guess. I mean, I guess nothing's going to come of it. I don't quite exactly understand their plan. I mean, they're talking about right now. They're trying to put popular pressure on the state legislatures in several states because they seem to think that those legislatures, and maybe they do, maybe somebody in those states has the power to decertify certified electors. I don't know. They have various scenarios. One scenario is if you just run the clock out, I guess till January 20th, if you can stall in some manner, then apparently Nancy Pelosi would become president, and that's just step one in their plan. But I don't see how they successfully stall because the rules governing what could happen January 6th, I mean, it sounds like they have a decent chance of challenging these delegations on January 6th. But there are rules about how much time you can spend on debate there, A. And then B, as I understand it, you got to have support in both chambers of Congress to do anything. And this isn't like what happens if the election gets thrown into the House of Representatives, because then each state delegation only gets one vote and the Republicans would have the edge. But this would just be straight up representatives voting. So the Democrats would have control of the House and nothing would ultimately happen. So I don't totally get that they don't get very clear on their scenarios. But man, is he good at, they point to things that are happening. They did pressure the Georgia Secretary of State into starting an audit of signature matching in one county.
And a sampling of the whole state.
Is that true too?
There's a second one.
Statistical sampling.
Yeah.
And in Maricopa County in Arizona, I guess these voting machines have been impounded or something by the state Senate or something. I don't.
And they won a lawsuit, part of a lawsuit in Wisconsin that would if it had happened before the election, before they certified the vote, would have thrown out half of Biden's lead.
What was the issue exactly?
Oh God, it was. Voters who were signed up, voters who voted at a rally held a couple of weeks before the election, I think, and that was a violation of something or other, probably ballot harvesting.
I mean,
that was like 15,000 votes.
They're working on all fronts. I just don't have a clear sense of how visible it is beyond the cocoon. I mean, have you heard about this Peter Navarro report?
I heard about it. I sort of tuned out all that stuff. I rely on you as my lifeline to the right, Bob.
Well, I'll tell you what amazes me.
You're letting me down here.
Well, no. I mean, I can tell you what's happening inside the chamber, and they claim the poll numbers are moving in their direction.
I sense that they've in their heart of hearts they've accepted what's going to happen. And it's become a game for them.
But what's amazing is like Peter Navarro, he's somebody that you like, right?
I like him. I don't like him. I mean, what do I know about trade policy? Lighthizer seems like the cool head.
Oh, he is the cool head.
And Navarro's the bad cop, so I'm for Lighthizer.
But, I mean, Navarro, he issued this whole report that they're very proud of about all the evidence that the election is fraudulent. He goes on Bannon's podcast. Bannon says, okay, like, give us your lead. Like, start with the big stuff. And he goes into this standard routine of, like, well, Trump was way ahead on election night, and then suddenly the Democrats start catching up. Now, it's one thing if you want to say, we knew that the Democrats would start catching up to some extent because they dominated the mail-in ballots, but it seems like they closed the gap way more than was possible. Fine. But he doesn't even mention that. He acts like it's mysterious that when they started counting, and I don't, that's just kind of shocking to me. But I do think I'm sticking by my claim that this is bad news for the country, and it's getting worse, and Bannon is making it worse, and all these people are making it worse.
I think it's already getting better even as we speak.
Oh, yeah?
People are paying much more attention to Biden. Trump is getting a little crowded out of the news. I mean, things are happening where he should be in the news. He should be fighting for cash in this COVID relief package. And he's not. The story came out today that the CDC is prioritizing vaccines for essential workers over old people because the old people are too white. Gee, if we had a white nationalist in the White House, demagogue, you'd think he'd make something of this plan to kill white people. No, he's not doing that. He's talking about reviving The Apprentice. I mean, so I just think
I didn't buy that story. I didn't buy that story. Okay. The story that, Trump he's so resigned to losing, he's talking about reviving The Apprentice. He's not going to revive The Apprentice. That was 100% bullshit.
Okay. I accept your critique. But people should be skeptical of elections. So if they come out of this election with a healthy skepticism, as opposed to a totally defeatist, despairing attitude toward democracy, that's fine. Doesn't bother me.
If it leads to improvement of the system, and it probably will. I mean, remember, this is our first experiment with large-scale mail-in
the
ballots.
Republicans ain't going to go for any more mail-in ballots, that's for sure.
Well, we'll see. But
and that's a good thing. They should, if they go back to paper, why do they have machines in the first place? They should go back to paper ballots counted by human beings.
Well, that's a separate question.
I understand they can't do that during a pandemic. Or counted by machines, but with a paper ballot there.
Right. Yeah, but that's a separate question as to whether they should, the mail-in ballots. And there they decide, Yeah. In all these cases, they'll decide on a state-by-state basis.
Paper ballots voted on Election Day. How about that?
Speaking of the pandemic, just quickly, did you see this op-ed piece in the New York Times saying that maybe they could double the number of people vaccinated? Because if you look at the data closely, I mean, the two big companies, Moderna and Pfizer, both did their large-scale tests with 2 doses of the vaccine, okay, like separated by 3 or 4 weeks. That's going to be the regimen. But turns out, if you look at the data, there's evidence that 1 dose alone gives you a tremendous benefit of unknown duration, but there's no reason to think it's not long. And so it might be the case that it would be fine for people to wait 3, 4, 5, 6 months for the second dose, in which case we could double. Instead of 100 million Americans vaccinated by the end of February, whatever they're hoping for, it'd be 200 million. I mean, that would be huge, right?
That would be huge. They still don't know if you can transmit it.
Right.
If you're vaccinated and protected against the disease. So maybe the 1 dose isn't enough to prevent the transmission. Maybe.
That is one of the weirder unknowns. I think the assumption is that it will impede transmission as well as keep you from getting the disease, but oddly they're not quite sure. I don't think that. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, it's a good example of an unconventional line of attack that they will almost certainly not pursue because it's not conventional, just like the challenge trials, which they should have done.
That's a good argument. It was encouraging that rich people I'm with Josh Barrow on this. it's encouraging that rich people are trying to jump the queue and buy their way into getting the vaccine, because it sort of makes other people want to get the vaccine and sort of tends to discourage, people who are scared to get the vaccine. Well, if the rich people want it,
right?
They should have given it out at a club with a velvet rope where they just didn't let anybody in for a couple of weeks. But this is a second best to that. But the weird thing is people are going to be a little scared of taking the vaccine, and we're going to see this phenomenon where somebody prominent says, "Oh, I decided to selflessly give up my place in line to this poor elderly African American janitor. Here, you take the vaccine." And this accomplishes both getting them out of not taking a vaccine they don't want to take and giving them social credit points. And we've already seen a little bit of that, so I think that phenomenon is going to happen. I don't know why can you give your place in line to anybody else? You shouldn't be able to.
I didn't realize you could. You can do that? You can designate somebody?
I guess it depends on the organization that's giving out the vaccines. Why can't you sell it? You're the guy for selling organs, right? You should be able to sell your place in line.
Yeah, I'm a big organ sales booster. So I should start being nice to people over 65. And I just want to say, Mickey, I've always held you in highest regard. And I'm having second thoughts about that thing I said about you earlier.
You think I'm over 65?
No, you don't look it. That's the thing.
Yeah,
you don't look older
right.
than me. It's amazing. And in that suit, I'm talking like 45 max.
There you go.
You look marvelous.
I didn't look that great at 45, so it's...
Well, it was kind of a backhanded compliment, I grant you, but it was a compliment.
The other thing is, in terms of the class divide, I'm not troubled by the class divide of the vaccine. Everybody's going to eventually get it, and I am troubled by the sort of we have to. I mean, one philosopher literally said, whites have gotten so much benefit that we shouldn't give the vaccine to elderly people, even though it would lower the amount of deaths. We should sort of give an extra benefit to blacks to compensate for structural racism. That seems ridiculous.
Well, I mean, first of all, how strong is this class divide thing? I don't understand. Like, how many upper class people are going to have special access to this? I mean,
I wouldn't think it's great,
think it's very small.
There's a huge class divide, I think, on the cure, which is monoclonal antibodies and Regeneron. In other words, Trump got these medicines. They obviously work pretty well.
So did Rudy.
We don't know that Rudy got both of them. We think he just got Regeneron.
Yeah, well, he said he got Regeneron, but that's huge. I mean, getting the monoclonal antibodies, that's like the gold standard in therapeutics right now.
So is there any, I'm not a scientist. Is there any chance to provide these medicines to all 300 million people?
No, apparently for reasons I don't understand, those are in limited supply. I mean, I don't understand in general why you can't kind of gear up faster with all these things, vaccines and medicines, but apparently it's hard. But doesn't the emphasis on essential workers, they come fairly early in line, right? And that's
the controversy,
right? But that's anti-classist, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. But the argument is you save more lives if you get to the elderly before the essential workers. I think
that's bullshit. I mean, it partly depends on, does it impede transmission? If it impedes transmission, I think the essential workers are the people you want to give it to. They're out there contacting people. The old people are just, in cloisters.
Apparently they have models, and I think the models show that you save more lives if you give it to the elderly people first, because they are so much more susceptible to getting it. But what do I know?
Good question.
If the data had shown that it's better to give it to essential workers to avoid deaths, they wouldn't have had to resort to the reverse racism argument in order to give it to them. Obviously, essential workers are sort of, if they classified essential workers as A, who are really essential, and B, not like podcasters in Los Angeles who are essential, and B, who are out there and out and about spreading, as opposed to essential where you're not spreading, that would be a very useful distinction to make. but they don't seem to make that distinction.
No. But the numbers are bad, man. I mean, the 7-day rolling average is above 2,500, and just Wednesday, 3,500 people died.
But the national case numbers are plateauing.
Well, that's good.
The California case numbers are not. They're going through the roof. But the national ones are. And keep in mind, California, we're still doing better than average.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's saying much, but we are on the up. We are on a skyrocket to the stars in terms of the graphs. But the national one is sort of, you could say, it's rounding the hump of the mountain, and it hasn't gone down yet, but it sort of stopped going up.
Yeah, well, should be a leading indicator, but it'll be a while before it catches up with deaths. And the thing is, as of now, I mean, other vaccines may come online, they may be good, but the only ones we have huge confidence in, I think, are Moderna and Pfizer. And as of now, it seems like the U.S. has 150 million doses kind of guaranteed. That's like, well, wait. No, it must be more than that. It must be, I think it's 300 million guaranteed, so that's 150 million people. But then it's like very unclear. So you get less than half of the country vaccinated, and then as of now, it's not clear how soon, going into summer and so on, you can get the rest of it done. I don't know.
I never understood this 4 vaccine strategy. Well,
apparently,
I'm with you. And Alex Azar is like the world's least effective communicator.
Well, apparently we bought the most units of the worst one, of AstraZeneca. Apparently we bought 300 million doses of that, and we didn't buy that many of either of the ones that have turned out to be apparently very good.
Maybe AstraZeneca was cheaper. So
that could well be. And it's easier distributed. It doesn't have to be kept so cold. And look, even at 60, 70%, I sign me up. Sign me up. I'm ready. And then give me an antibody test and I'll know.
The interesting, yeah. I was about to predict that Joe Biden would chicken out of getting the vaccine.
Are you kidding? Why?
Because his wife is known to be paranoid about his health, and there are always chances. That,
she is a doctor.
She is a doctor, exactly. But he scheduled it for Monday, so it's going to be hard to chicken out now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think I had heard he's very, I don't know. I don't know why he wouldn't, but I think he's going to do it. Is he going to do it like on live TV or something?
It's a good question. I don't know.
So if
we don't see it, I'm not going to believe it happened. It's going to be like a guy walking on the moon,
Yeah, we should start the conspiracy theories now. And then, you could go further and say he didn't get it, he died of COVID, and this isn't the real Joe Biden you're seeing. So you passed over the Dr. Joe Biden bait without saying anything, Mickey. You don't have thoughts?
Well, I do have thoughts. My thoughts are there are 3 arguments against it. One is a general protest against meritocracy. So what is she doing flaunting her credential? The second is that she's just sort of insecure, and it reflects badly on her, that she's so, wants to bolster her self-esteem with this degree, which I think it's true. I buy that one, although you can't say it in public. And the third is that it's just we believe in degrees, we believe in titles, we believe in meritocracy, but this is a bullshit degree, and her term paper and her doctorate dissertation sucked. So there are 3 separate arguments. I think each of them is pretty good. My main regret is that I didn't get to bring up the most famous doctor wife of a politician. I've been looking for a way, like in Twitter, to bring up this woman.
Now's your chance.
Mrs. Ceausescu, the dictator of Romania,
who met an untimely end, along with her husband.
Right, paraded around as just she was a doctor, and not a bullshit doctor of education, a doctor of, I think, petrochemical studies, and there's a book you can get on Amazon, which I'll link to in the links section. You can get her scientific treatise, which was obviously written by other people. I couldn't bring it up because, Biden presumably did the work for her doctorate, and Ceausescu, I think, maybe did not do the work for her doctorate. So people might point this out, but it's the same thing. It's like the emperor's new clothes. I dare you not to call me a doctor. I have the power to make you call me a doctor because I'm powerful. That's another reason people resent it.
Oh, that seems kind of silly, though. I mean, anybody who says they want to get called doctor gets called doctor. I always refer to Seb Gorka as Dr. Seb Gorka.
He's a very good example against your argument because people go out of their way not to call him doctor.
I call him Dr. Seb, actually, for short. I sometimes leave off the Gorka, but never the doctor. So I haven't read her dissertation. But how many dissertations out there are really great? That's a question I'd like to have the answer to.
No, that's a very good question. This guy from the National Review read it and said it was awful, but did he read all the other dissertations?
He didn't sound like an unbiased appraiser.
That's for sure.
I do think the field of education is over-credentialed. I mean, there are too many cases where good teachers can't get a promotion or can't teach at all if they don't have a particular degree, and they would be great teachers. But
no kidding.
That's not an original point.
There was
I know.
Serious consideration to getting rid of ed schools, and it never happens. I think that would be a good idea.
Never does happen.
So I went and I heard Evan Osnos, who's a very smart writer for The New Yorker, talk about his new book on Biden.
Yep, son of Peter Osnos.
Okay, and he made one... There were questions after it, and he made... people very smartly... He said Biden is a committed... I don't think this is off the record, and he has a book to promote, and it sounded like a good book. So he said Biden is a committed centrist. He's ideological, and people said, well, what does he mean by centrist? Does he mean just an issue where you can get 4 Republican votes and meet in the middle, and that's the center? Or does he actually have a third way-like vision of what this centrist society would be? It's not completely capitalist. It's we redistribute money from the winners to the losers. It's basically a market economy. That was the sort of probably the neoliberal vision. Does he have some centrist vision? And Oslo basically said, nah, it's the first one. It's meet in the middle, yeah.
That's a standard politician's thing, isn't it? I mean, how many of them have true ideologies?
Usually they at least try to come up with an ideology for show. And sometimes they actually come to believe. I mean, Clinton, he was spouting Nonzero, this complete pie-in-the-sky book by some crank, because he obviously had internalized his vision, and his vision involved non-zero interactions with other nations. I
gotta say, that was an interesting episode. I don't understand why he did that. And he did it, I mean, honestly, he must have mentioned that book in like 40 speeches. He just was on a tear. And I'm grateful, but it's like if I were a politician, it's like, why bother associate yourself with some guy whose book, first of all, the book itself has its crazy aspects, but secondly, like, who knows what else this person has been, has said from time to time. It's like, why do it?
Maybe he had staff to advise him. He's a smart guy. He probably read the book and liked it.
He absolutely read the book. I talked to him about it. He read the book. But
don't discount sincerity.
I'm not complaining. I mean it is a compliment. It wasn't the obvious political thing to do.
If it were Jeffrey Toobin, I would look for the selfish angle.
Right.
But with an upstanding person like Bill Clinton, I would not do that.
Huh. And you seem to be sincere when you say that.
I am sort of sincere. I mean, Clinton's a con man, so the question of what he sincerely believes and what he just thinks will sell is all mixed together in his brain. He probably couldn't give you an answer himself if you asked him, does he really believe this highfalutin stuff? But at least he feels the need to serve up highfalutin stuff. And the horror of Biden is not only does he have no vision, but at some point very soon, after the 15th columnist says he has no vision, he will feel compelled to come up with a vision. And that's really going to be a horror story. So it'd be much better if he said, I have no vision, you're right, I'm a transactional politician. And here tell me if this is a good blog item, probably not. The pandemic is his friend, because as long as the pandemic is going on, he has something to do. He doesn't need a vision. He has a purpose in life. The purpose in life is stopping the pandemic and saving the country, okay? Mm-hmm. So everybody's going to cut him some slack as long as he has this war to fight. But as soon as the war's over, the vacuum is going to become obvious.
I'd say blog item, maybe op-ed, no.
Yeah, okay, but it's better than a tweet. It's better than a tweet.
You could argue that it would be bursting at the seams if you tried to confine it to a tweet. Could be a good thread. And maybe all blog posts should be. Oh, threads are. I want to start indulging in them more. Not indulging, but disciplining myself with them. They're good discipline, I think.
Good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, this is advice for young writers that we'll save for the Parrot Room. I'm writing down advice for young writers because I don't think we have many young writers out there.
But anyway, I hate threads. But anyway, so I just thought it was interesting that Osnos, no question, didn't try to. This is a very favorable. He likes Biden. This is a favorable to Biden book, but didn't even try to contend that Biden had any vision. So
there are worse things than having no vision.
He says something right.
There's like being Trump and really persuading a bunch of people you have a vision when you only have the faintest impulses in that direction, and actually you're just a complete narcissistic creep.
Trump's vision was always a little indistinct, but he did set in motion the process by which other people are refining that vision.
I'm telling you, it is. People ask, why do you subject yourself to the Steve Bannon podcast? You're seeing it happen. I mean, they're using this whole election thing to separate the true believers from the rhinos with a narrower definition of true believer than before.
But Bannon isn't articulating a populist vision. There are other people who are.
Oh, he totally is. I mean, at least, I don't mean in the sense of writing the great treatise on it, but he comes back again and again to the basic idea that you, the deplorables, have been exploited and overlooked by the global elites who send your job to China and then send you off to war. It's like, and in fact, as time goes on, like, it seems like, I mean, when he's got good election stuff, he does it, but sometimes the podcast seems very much about, amplifying those larger themes in preparation for what comes after the election, the inauguration, in the event that it's Biden. I mean, of course, there is this separate challenge of him staying out of jail, but God knows he's done enough work for Trump that he should get a pardon. I mean, he may be the reason the Hunter Biden hard drive exists. That emerged from him and Giuliani. He and Giuliani have, to some extent, spearheaded the whole post-election thing.
Have you figured out whether this computer repairman who claimed to have discovered the hard drive is legit, or if that was a setup?
To me, it just seems a hell of a coincidence. My guess would be they hacked Hunter Biden, and so replicated the entire hard drive. So they do have the equivalent of the hard drive. But, the
hard drive is real, but it wasn't in that computer shop.
They have the informational equivalent of the hard drive would be and I would guess they don't actually have the hard drive itself. You might ask, why doesn't Hunter Biden make that point? It's because he doesn't want to talk about it at all.
Well, the FBI seized the hard drive.
I'll tell you.
The FBI examined the hard drive. It exists.
Well, hard drive exists. Hard drive exists, but it could not be Hunter Biden's. It could be the equivalent of his on a newly purchased hard drive. But on Bannon today, I heard them replay the tape of Hunter talking about some of this stuff, and I'm telling you, this is The narrative they're building, the Bidens are in bed with China. China took your job. China, it goes on and on. But they have enough goods to sell it to the community they're selling it to.
They can sell it to me. That I don't find that scenario completely implausible.
Well, in fact, you tweeted this very week, Mickey. Why did the Wall Street Journal seemingly abruptly decide to squelch the Hunter Biden story pre-election? So you're still on this case.
Well, that was, the Hunter Biden scandal is just starting. I mean, I haven't seen any Biden's explanation for why this isn't a scandal is I love my son. He's the smartest person I know. Did you think he was the smartest person you know when you saw him, when you heard him on the Bannon podcast?
Well, I don't know him. Is he smarter than anyone I know? Well, if you rule out you, maybe he's smart. Yeah. No, what I thought when Biden said he was the smartest person he knew, and then he added, in terms of sheer intellectual capacity, what I thought was, it's true what they're saying. Biden needs to get out more. But as for the Wall Street Journal, I think your complaint is not fair. I mean, the Journal, what they did was they apparently had access to the whole thing. They reported their little summary, and it had the effect of kind of dismissing the case. But I think they rightly were focused on the question of, is there evidence? Is there credible evidence of Joe Biden breaking the law? And if that's a criterion...
They came up with the one sentence that could exculpate him, which is there's no sort of formal mention of him in the hard drive of him playing a role. Okay, but there is, and that sort of was used as the excuse to dismiss it. But there is 10% for the big guys, so there are suggestions in the hard drive that maybe there is this big guy who is obviously Joe Biden, who's getting 10%. That may be bullshit. It may be braggadocio. It may be a plant. It may be fake. But it's not, you can't dismiss it the way they dismissed it. The way they dismissed it was obviously a command decision. Either Rupert Murdoch ordered them, or they decided, well, Trump was advertising this as a big coup, so screw Trump. We're not his pawn, or we want Biden to win, or something. But it was a executive decision because it doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
Well, two things. First of all, remember, that was 2018. He wasn't in office. There would have been nothing illegal about him being a party to that. Now, you might say, but if he wasn't an official party, but they were channeling revenue to him, that's income tax evasion. Well, I guess it technically is, although usually income tax evasion means reducing the amount of money that goes to the government. In this case, it would just be James Biden or somebody paying the taxes that Joe Biden would have paid. It probably still is. I'm just saying there's a tendency to lose sight of the fact that all of this happened when he was no longer vice president, and it would have been perfectly legal and not even violate any ethical strictures for him to engage in any business dealings he wanted in China. I think the
negotiations started before he left office, and also it would be a huge scandal if China was funneling millions and millions of dollars to Joe Biden, given that he subsequently ran for office and was elected president.
It would definitely be noteworthy.
If that's the truth, he should admit it, and he's not going to admit it because it's a huge scandal, even if it's legal.
Yeah, if it's true, he probably won't be. He doesn't seem to be rushing out there to say it. So if it's true,
I just think anytime a politician has a sore spot like this, if you say Hunter Biden, he goes, "Why are you asking that question? I love him. He's my son, and he's the smartest person I know." That's just in any reasonable press apparatus, that's like catnip. That says, hey, we have to poke him again. Why is he so sensitive, right? And he's relying on the press being like completely castrated, and I don't think the press has been completely castrated. I think I've been heartened by the speed with which they've dropped their pro-Biden, lid and have started to ask nasty questions.
I don't think Stephen Colbert is there yet, Mickey. Did you see that interview?
No, I heard it was fawning.
It was also edited, by the way. So, I think it was the best of, it was the best parts of a friendly interview, My complaint about that, and this may move us into this big computer hack territory. In fact, it does. My complaint about that interview is the way Colbert, he's continuing to have his foreign policy impulses shaped by Russiagate, right? It's like like he's saying, he's egging Biden on, like in response to the hack, like, so are you going to throw a brushback pitch? I mean, like, shouldn't we toughen up? And like, first of all, it's a crazy kind of question because look, the unspoken rules of the game are right now, you try to hack us, we try to hack you. We both do a lot of it. Sometimes we get caught. When they catch us, they don't publicize it. So who knows how many times they've caught us. But that's the game as long as you confine it to spying. If you escalate and start taking out power plants, that's a different story. But right now, we do it. They do it. The idea, and yet Biden is talking this way. I mean, here's what he said. I don't think he said this in the Colbert interview. He says, a good defense isn't enough. We need to disrupt and deter our adversaries from undertaking significant counterattacks in the first place. I mean, of course, my own one worlder view, my own progressive realist one worlder view is we should talk seriously about an actual treaty, like coming to an agreement, like we don't do this to you, you don't do this to us. But until then, the idea that Russia is violating some norm is nuts. They're doing exactly what we do. And yet people like Colbert, precisely because they're stuck in this mindset that Trump wasn't tough on Russia, but Joe Biden will be, right? They have to encourage him to be more provocative than is justified.
I never understand this diplo speak as, well, Trump has sat idly by, but we would issue a sternly worded statement. It's like, so what? Unless you're like Marco Rubio, who said, I expect you to pick up on this. He said, we need to strike back, and I'm not talking just sanctions. So I think that fits with your image of Marco Rubio.
And then they leave it at that.
I like your idea of a treaty. That would seems like a useful thing. It's perilously close to what Trump proposed with Putin at the beginning, which is he proposed some sort of joint cybersecurity trust. If he'd phrased it as a treaty, people might have understood what the hell he was talking about. But
the part of Trump I like
seems
is
like a good idea. The
part of Trump I like, and this may well not be reflected in the Biden administration, and that's one thing I wrote about in this Washington Post piece, is that, I mean, to the extent that you could extract any coherent policy from his various utterances and actions, he seemed to think you should not subordinate your relationships with other nations, the fundamentals of your relationships and your willingness to do mutually beneficial deals, to your judgment of their political system in terms of how closely it comports with your democratic values and so on. No, I think we should, something like arms control in any realm should not depend on whether we've converted the entire world to democracy. I mean, we should be willing to deal with all these countries. And, and the Biden people would kind of say that, but they're talking about like starting a league of democracies and blah, blah, blah.
Biden is, I think, at least claims to be, and people say it's true, is pretty anti-Russian in a way that would please opponents of your book. Peter Osnos told this story, which I'm not sure if it's unique to him or if it's been out before, where Biden goes and visits Putin, and to shake things up, he says, I've looked into your eyes, Mr. Putin, and I've concluded you have no soul. And Putin responds, well, then we understand each other.
I'm warming up to that guy. But go ahead.
Have any of the people, the Ann Applebaums of the world, and the Elena Kagan, not Elena Kagan, the former ambassador to the Ukraine,
Victoria Nuland.
That
wasn't quite her job, but yeah.
Have they attacked you over your soft on Russia?
No, I mean you mean the Washington Post piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it got a fair amount of visibility in the foreign policy community and a fair amount of support from like-minded people. But I failed to successfully troll my adversaries. I gotta think it got enough play. Now I think it's going to be in this week's Outlook section, so it'll get kind of a second wind, but in the physical Outlook section in the Post. But
you got to follow Strout's law, publish every piece 3 times.
Yeah.
And the second piece, you have to name names and actually poke the sore spot.
Hey, I named names. I named Michael McFaul in the first paragraph. He is completely refusing to be trolled by me. He has demonstrated that repeatedly.
Can I suggest Ann Applebaum as a person to troll?
I should do more trolling.
She is at the hot center of this network of people, and I think she is trollable.
Okay.
I think you'll get a reaction. She has a column.
Yeah.
She has a column to write. McFaul doesn't have a column to write. You know?
That's a good point.
If you have a column to write, you got to respond to everything, or else you have nothing to write.
That is a good point.
So,
now, quickly, I will say that Biden, what's disturbing is, okay, you say he's already, kind of hostile toward Russia. Well, if Bannon is successful, Biden will be coerced into being anti-China, to respond to the narrative that he and Hunter are in bed with Xi Jinping. That will tend to push him toward coldness toward China at best, if not hostility. Right. So that is my concern. By the way, Can I
go ahead.
Quickly complain about a Washington Post reporter's tweet? This is Greg Miller, national security correspondent, Washington Post. He's a reporter, okay? And he writes, his tweet is, the U.S. is under attack again by Russia. The president has said nothing. The U.S. hasn't said they know for sure it was Russia, so technically a reporter shouldn't put it that way, even though it's probably Russia. B, a president could have good reasons for choosing not to say anything right now. And I doubt Greg Miller has done an exhaustive analysis of that possibility. C, he's a reporter. Quit editorializing.
D, we don't know what Trump said in private, although I doubt he said anything. But
sometimes you deliver your messages through private channels. And E, sadly, this only helps his Twitter following, and that's why all these people tweet like this, and that's all. But quickly, an award to another Washington Post reporter. Where is this? This was the, I've complained about, false claims of fraud. When, look, if you're a reporter, you don't know for sure that they're false. And this guy did the most nuanced, appropriately nuanced, I think, ever description of the actual evidence. Now I'm at the moment having trouble finding it, but I'll get there. Give me 1 second. Oh, the drama is getting so intense that now I'm starting to panic and may not be able to find it. So,
can you summarize?
That wouldn't do it justice. I'll find it and get back to it. I hope by the end. Although, have we been going an hour already?
You can get to it in the parrot room if you want.
Well, I definitely want to talk about this. New York Times has now essentially withdrawn this Caliphate podcast that we talked about earlier.
And I want to talk about Eric Swalwell. So I have a couple points about your piece first. In the back and forth about your piece, somebody said you're inside FDD's head. What is FDD?
I wish. I hope. It's a Foundation for Defense of Democracies. They are a neocon organization, and they're kind of the worst, and yet, they're pretty successful because what they do is, they got money from Sheldon Adelson. Another big donor is this guy who I think founded but runs Home Depot. Marcus is his last name. And he's roughly in Adelson's territory ideologically. What they do is they cultivate like actual experts who know things and know how to generate good quotes. So they get quoted by David Sanger. Yeah, I'm gonna write his name down. I might talk about him in the parrot room a little. So they get quoted by the David Sangers of the world, and that's how they maintain their credibility. But they are just the most hardcore anti-Iran ideologues. Right. It's like unbelievable. But yeah, Foundation for Defense of Democracies is the enemy.
Can I say one one of the ways I do not buy your complete worldview is I think China is building a totalitarian 21st century state, the likes of which we have never seen, and it's an exception to the normal rule of how you behave vis-a-vis other nations. It's so potentially evil that you can't just say, well, we have to cut the deals we can and overlook its enslavement of the Uyghurs, et cetera, et cetera. And that does seem the central foreign policy challenge of our time, is stopping this nightmare that's happening. And, it'd be great if China was a normal nation that got rich and exercised its power, and, we had to adapt to that, and that'd be great, but that's not what's happening.
I think it's certainly true that, I think China has surprised almost everybody in their ability to rein in what was for a while thought to be a technological force, that is digital information technology in the online age, that was almost inherently decentralizing in its effect on power.
Right.
And it's impressive. I think the jury is still out on that. I think the night is young. And I think, frankly, if you ask, how free is the average person in China to agitate politically, how much information do they have about the outside world? If you compare that to 40 years ago, both of those things I think you could argue have actually improved. Now, that doesn't help the Uyghurs, and it doesn't help a lot of things. And I think basically this is a conversation so long we should, it's parrot room material. I mean, let me see how long we have gone.
I do think. Look, I just wanted to raise it. I didn't want to resolve it. I just wanted to raise it.
I do have this, as you know, this reflexive whataboutism that, again, is never intended to absolve anybody for anything, but is just intended to ask us to reflect on how uniquely moral we in fact are. Isn't clear to me that this is not that this is worse than the Japanese internment. You could argue it's not as bad. After all, the Japanese, we just rounded up every person of Japanese descent. They at least claim to have criteria for sending people to these, quote, re-education camps in China. And they're creepy criteria. They're like keeping track of, like, I don't know, probably things like, how did you buy 2 copies of the Quran, or did you, it's like, and it reflects exactly what rightly bothers you about how pervasive their monitoring system is, right? They're like adding all these things up and saying, oh, you're a security risk.
I've seen films about the Japanese internment camps, and they're nothing like what I read about the Uyghurs. You weren't allowed to leave, and they were in these barracks, but I don't think they were subjected to indoctrination
that part is different. The part I'm talking about, that part is better. The part I'm talking about is worse. It was based strictly on ethnicity, but at least arguably worse.
It was arguably that's less intrusive than trying to monitor the behavior of every individual by omnipresent security cameras and rounding up the people who behave badly.
Well, that's an interesting argument. We can get into this in
we don't have
the parrot room. We'll save it for the end of the parrot room since it's pretty nerdy.
What did you want to bring up? Is the parrot room nerdy or dirty? I thought it was like
it's supposed to be dirty, and that's nerdy. That's what I'm saying. It's both. It's dirty, nerdy. Okay. No, that's a good point.
So you go first.
Wait. Here's the Washington Post reporter, Jeremy Barr. So far as I know, no relation to the former Attorney General, but his quote is, "There have been no substantiated claims of organized fraud on a scale to affect the results in any state." That's a good, safe, repertorial way to put it, and that's enough, in my view. So I want to credit.
It's very cleverly worded, but that's basically my view.
I think you want to be on the safe side, and
it's not gonna convince anybody who's in the Steve Bannon camp. They're just going to say, well, you don't want to find the fraud.
Still, he gets an award. It's so much better than what than what most reporters are doing.
I just want to mention, isn't it bizarre that a whole list of publications, and Alan Tonelson points out it's not just the New York Times, just haven't covered this Eric Swalwell scandal that he was sleeping with a Chinese spy? Yes, he turned on her, and once the FBI gave him a defensive briefing, he may have cooperated. But still, what did he tell her before then? Does she still have any blackmail on him? Isn't it a fallacy of judgment that he fell for it in the first place? Mightn't he fall for it again? I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues that should be reported out, and you won't find it reported at all in the New York Times. It's unbelievable.
Well, it was reported enough that I caught wind of it, but
not you didn't get wind of it from the New York Times.
That's probably true. I forget where I saw it. Now there were other people as well, right? So Swalwell and several others, but is he the only one who's kind of currently in office?
Well, they were lower down people. The idea is, I guess, they compromise the people as they're on the way up the ladder.
And do we know that he slept with her?
I don't think it's been admitted 100%, but
well, perhaps
I think it's pretty
perhaps
obvious.
You should have qualified your earlier assertion to the effect that he did, Mickey.
He can sue me. We'll have fun on Discovery.
If he could sue you in the parrot room,
everybody seems to say the hilarious thing is that she's obviously the best girlfriend he's ever had, because his brother and father are like friending her on Facebook. When will we see you again? I mean, they're like. It's a sitcom. Jake Weisberg's brother could get a whole series out of it.
Is his brother? Is Jake's brother a sitcom guy?
Jake's brother's the guy that did the thing about the Russian spies. What was it? American something.
Oh, the Americans.
The Americans, yeah. So now
I don't think that was a sitcom, was it?
I didn't say it was a sitcom, but it's. They could branch out. It'd be a stretch for them.
That reminds me, Obama...
He could do a whole other series about Chinese spies.
Obama unveiled his favorite TV shows.
Why am I not excited about that?
Devs, baby. He's a devs guy, like you and me.
Man, that depresses me. I want to like a show that Obama doesn't like.
We'll talk about that in the parrot room. So... Is there anything? Oh, quickly, Pete Buttigieg, transportation guy.
You had some whole theory. You had a whole topic you wanted to discuss. It.
Did I?
Yeah, it was the retraction of the Calamachi story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to. What the question should? But do I need to get into? Should I get into that here or save it for?
You could save it. I don't see what's so.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a. I think it's of. I mean, I do want to raise the question of why heads rolled in the case of James Bennett and they're not rolling now.
Yeah. Okay, we can talk about that
and talk a little more about the specific case. And then Native American Interior Secretary. Yeah. That's good.
This is all very mundane. I mean, I don't object to Buttigieg getting the transportation secretary. It's a payoff for him withdrawing for the campaign. Fine, that's politics. That's how Biden got the nomination. So,
but what about all the others? What about Elizabeth Sanders, Bernie? Bernie didn't exactly withdraw in Joe's favor. It's true. But what about
the Buttigieg thing? Was clear. What does Amy Klobuchar get out of it?
Right.
Her withdrawal was key too. So, and of course she hates Buttigieg. So this is not only a slap in the face at Amy Klobuchar, this reward to Buttigieg. So
Mickey, I just want to close.
I wish him well. I hope he does a good job. I'm not wildly optimistic, but I hope he does a good job.
I think he'll do a fine job. What does the transportation secretary do?
Well, there's a whole infrastructure bill that's supposed to be Biden's big achievement.
I think he'll be good. I mean, I kind of do and don't understand why he triggers so many people on the left and not even that far left. I do, kind of, and don't kind of, but...
He's a guy who's figured out how to give a good speech, and he's obviously a Rhodes Scholar.
Oh, he's totally a Rhodes Scholar resume polisher for sure.
So there.
But... Mickey, before we head into Parrot Room, I would just point one thing out. Now, earlier, you cast aspersions on Maroon 5 after it was noted that its lead guitarist was a fan of my work. And I just want to point out that there's something, just by way of like evaluating your own credentials for passing judgment on rock and roll music. You tweeted the following this week. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Hated this song. Then I realized that it cooks. And you know what this song is, Mickey? Bad Case of Loving You by Robert Palmer. Seriously, Mickey? You like that song?
Is that a cliche?
No, it's just an obviously not very good song. It's like a song...
That's my point. It's a not very good song, but the performance of it is so good that it makes it a great song.
Oh, we're already kind of backtracking and recalibrating, aren't we?
No, that's exactly what I said. I said it's a schlocky song, and it cooks, meaning it has the muscle shoals or some incredible rhythm section behind it, and they just do a bang up job. You can't help but be driven along by the song because it's so well performed.
It sounds like a song that could have been done by...
It was done by somebody else's song first. It's a cover song.
No, but it sounds like it could have been done by Huey Lewis and the News, and I don't mean that in a necessarily
That's a good comparison.
Yes, it is, and I don't mean that...
It is much better than Huey Lewis and the News because it just cooks. It's a much hotter song. They just do a much better job. They're on speed or something. They're inspired.
Speaking of which, did you take your Sudafed?
I did.
Okay, good. So it's going to be we're going to really be cooking in the parrot room.
You didn't mention my most embarrassing tweet of the week.
Why don't you share that with us?
Well, I was on Facebook and I noticed I'm on this site of L.A. The modernist era in L.A. looking back on L.A. and there was a picture of Dick Van Dyke and saying he was 95. He was celebrating his birthday. So I tweeted,
"Happy birthday, Dick!"
I tweeted and I wrote it in this incredibly schlocky way, like this guy Dick Van Dyke is turning 95 today. Just horrible, cringe-inducing prose. And of course, it is the most popular tweet I have tweeted in the past 2 years.
Well, wait, you mean what did it say exactly? I don't get it. It said this guy is turning 95.
It had a picture of Dick Van Dyke in front of some traffic sign saying caution, drive slowly or something. I don't know. It was probably after he'd gotten his speeding ticket. And it got 500,000 views. That's good for Mickey.
How many retweets and likes?
That's 7,000 retweets.
You're kidding.
No.
I should tweet about Dick Van Dyke. I like him. I hold him in very high regard.
And everybody likes Dick Van Dyke.
He's a boomer favorite. Rob and Laura Petrie.
He's great, and everybody likes him. He hasn't managed to pigeonhole himself on one side or the other.
New Rochelle.
So he reaches across to both parties.
Buddy.
And people like him because he's a unifying figure. He's like the last unifying figure. That was embarrassing because once you have success with a schlocky Hallmark greeting card tweet, you're going to want to do it again.
It's an addiction. It's an addiction. Okay, so what should we say? We should say, remind people, a week from today, no show, but the following Wednesday night, yes. And what else? So, self-promotion, patreon.com/parrotroom. If you want to support us and or gain access to the Parrot Room. We blew through the 600 mark, by the way, last week, as I predicted. Where are the doubters now, Mickey? Where are the doubters now? I don't hear them saying anything.
And because I didn't get this administration job, Bob, I might have to start charging for my newsletter, which is called kausfiles on Substack.com. But on the other hand, I'll have to start producing them at a slightly faster clip than 2 a month. So
I plan tentatively to start charging for the Nonzero newsletter, which you can find either at Substack or at nonzero.org and sign up for. It's free for now. And where, by the way, within, 2-3 days, I think I'm going to post the director's cut of that Washington Post piece. Not that I didn't love all of the editing and condensation, but just give people the opportunity.
You implied that they like took the life out of it, that there were funny lines.
I would never say anything. You said
it was the same substantively, implying that stylistically they had.
Oh, you mean on Twitter when somebody asked me about it? I said it. Yeah, I said it was about the same substantively. Well, it was a little we can talk about that. But I'm always grateful when an esteemed publication chooses to publish my work.
And admit it was a good hit. It was a good hit.
It was a good hit. Last week you advised me in the Parrot Room to swallow my pride and go with the edit.
And the next version should be the Troll edition, not the director's cut. The Troll's cut.
Yeah, I want to get into trolling very seriously, and I appreciate that guidance and inspiration. What else? You're Kaus Mickey at Twitter. I'm Robert Writer. Seems like there's something. Oh, The Wright Show. This is The Wright Show, an audio podcast, and if you rate it and review it, we will be more widely beloved, even than we are. Hard to imagine, I know.
It seems like this went by pretty fast without enough substantive meat, Yeah.
What can I say? Or substance or meat.
I have one bit of substance, an important bit of substance to me, which is that which we can talk about, where in the Parrot Room.
Mm-hmm.
But the substance is this will completely deflate the idea. Nobody will be interested in the Parrot Room after this. The censorship imposed by the social media giants, Facebook and Twitter, is corporatist in that it values established, institutions of the press over the individual everyman. So, the blue checkmark criteria, for example, they give a leg up to anybody who's employed by the established press. Everybody else has to compete,
mm-hmm.
And say, hey, I'm important too, and maybe they'll get it or not. But if you're in the official strata of officially recognized press, you win. And this is sort of fundamentally inimical to social equality. The whole idea of social equality is nobody has more rights than anybody else. Everybody's as good as everybody else. Yet if you're a Washington Post reporter, you'll get or even a Salon reporter, you'll get a blue check mark automatically. And if you're in a separate caste, so it's really an evil.
No, it's a horrible thing, and I would love to know what Jack Dorsey would say if you kind of put it to him. I mean, he purports to be this woke egalitarian. Yeah. What the hell is the excuse for creating this upper class and giving them special privileges?
Right. Even if he just said, "Hey, I give blue check marks to the people I like, and I like the New York Times and Washington Post," that would be better than establishing a formal criteria where if you're hired by the institutional press, you get special rights.
Well, you don't have to be hired by the institutional press. I mean, I think they've actually gotten pretty liberal in handing those things out. But the very idea of them being in the credentialing business is ridiculous.
But if you're in the institutional press, you automatically get a blue check mark.
Yeah, of course you do. That's true.
It's
a hideous and horrible thing. And I can't believe that after their 2 years of review, which took longer than maybe it should have taken, they didn't just decide to junk it. But apparently, I can now get a blue check mark, right? They're giving them out again,
starting it next year. They say.
I'm excited. I am excited.
But anyway, now we have nothing left to talk about in the Parrot Room because I think I've said all I have to say. But the idea that corporatism, and which does not mean favoring corporations, it means having institutions of society that are separated as the organs in a corpus, i.e. body, and treating society as if it was a body with some people have the eyes and ears, some people are the brains, they have special rights. Some people are like lower elements where they don't have special rights. Those would be the deplorables, Bob. That this is a violation of corporatism is a violation of social equality.
This certainly is. I'm not sure. Even if I didn't buy into your superorganism metaphor, I would say that.
But that's what it means. Corpus means body. That's why it's called
that's a good
corporatism.
point. That's a good point.
It is the model of fascism in Italy in the pre-Mussolini era.
That's deep. That's deep. You should say that for the Parrot Room. You shouldn't give that shit away for free, man. That was deep. That was deep.
I assume that's in Jodo Goldberg's liberal fascism. I mean, it's the obvious definition of corporatism.
Speaking of which, the Dispatch, his enterprise, actually had a a good piece on the Russian hacking thing. That might have been counter to my ideological expectations. But the quickly on the one quick more thing on these media and social media companies, like I think YouTube should be careful about like banning stuff it doesn't approve of, like claims of election fraud and stuff, because it is a lot easier for people to desert YouTube than it is Twitter. I mean, there is a conservative, pretty new, I think, conservative rival to Twitter. It's called Parler, I think. The rival to YouTube is called Rumble, and it's, you know, there are a lot of reasons not to desert Twitter, which we've talked about. You know, you're conservative, you want to troll the libs, and so on. But with YouTube, it's a much simpler thing, and you know, Bannon already has almost as many subscribers on Rumble as he had on YouTube. So I would be careful.
Isn't the lesson of Newsmax and the extent to which it has been able to steal Fox's audience? I think Greg Kelly actually beat Fox in one time segment recently. That's sort of that should be a shocking thing to all these big institutions who were saying, well, we have a brand, it'll be hard to erode our brand. It's sort of heartening that, no, their brand can be pretty quickly eroded.
Well, when your appeal is intensely ideological and an issue like this arises, you know, like the election, like the fraud issue, and people don't think you're being loyal enough, yeah, you can get deserted. Now, what worries me is I think Fox is being more and more accommodating to the Stop the Steal movement to stop the erosion of their audience. Do you get that sense?
Well, they have to. They're losing billions of dollars.
Well, you don't have to. You could always take the principled approach and not report crazy shit.
So,
and I'm not saying that all the stuff that the Stop the Steal movement says is crazy. Some of it is interesting and noteworthy and should be examined by mainstream media in ways it's not. But still.
Okay. Well, they could do a responsible Stop the Steal movement. So the Murdoch son's going to say, they're going to boast, hey, I destroyed this $1 billion asset. Good work.
Well,
they have to sell it. They have to sell it. They got to spruce up the bottom line.
I hadn't thought of that.
So the rumor is that they want to sell it.
Oh, they want to sell. They want to sell the network.
Fox, yeah.
Huh.
What do these liberal Murdoch people want to do? Have owning Fox? It makes no sense for them.
Well, I think it's a less liberal brother who's running it. But anyway,
right. But he's still not conservative enough to run Fox.
Who among us is, Mickey? Well, you are, but who else?
Not me. I've always been anti-Fox.
No, you're over at Newsmax.
No, I've always been anti-Fox. Fox is not a news organization. It's a mafia-like weird.
That's what led you to part ways with Tucker Carlson.
Correct.
Acting on principle, I might add.
Tell it to Ben Smith.
Okay, I will tell it to him. We should head into the parrot room.
Okay.
And I'll see you in the parrot room, and then Wednesday the 30th.
I'm starting to take off my tie in
anticipation
of the looser standards.
Mickey, there is no better way. There is no better way to allure people into signing up for the parrot room at patreon.com/parrot room than to say Mickey will now be slipping into something more comfortable. Right? Especially,
yes,
you know what I'm thinking here, right? The kind of patron we're going to be attracting.
You're thinking Jeffrey Toobin.
I'm not thinking Jeffrey Toobin.
What are you thinking?
I'll tell you in the parrot room.
Okay.
Okay. See ya.
See ya.